Are you tired of peeling off this paper when working on paper piece patterns? In this video, you'll learn how to use a lightweight facing and your computer printer to make a foundation that you don't have to tear out. You'll need freezer paper and a light to medium weight interfacing. Make sure that the facing is sew-in and not fusible. This technique won't work with fusible or iron-on interfacing. You'll also need a paper piecing pattern. We have a variety of free ones at our site under the Patterns tab. You'll be using a printer for this project. You want your printer to be an inkjet printer, not a laser printer. Laser printers can cause problems because the heat can melt the shiny side of the freezer paper. I'm using a home office copy machine / printer, and I haven't had any problems. I was told that the toner may be an issue, but everything's printed okay. Cut an 8.5 by 11-inch piece of freezer paper, then cut a little bit smaller piece of facing. You'll want it just a tiny bit smaller around the edges. It would be nice if we could just run this interfacing through our printers, but it's not stiff enough. That's why you need that freezer paper for support. Place the shiny side of the freezer paper up, facing you. The paper side should be down against the ironing board. Line up the facing on top of the freezer paper and press with a dry iron. I usually like to try out a small scrap before moving on to this larger piece. I start with a cool iron on the lowest setting and check to see if that's done anything. It's starting to stick. You don't want to use a high temperature on this facing as it's usually made out of polyester. You don't have to worry about the freezer paper. That can take an iron on the hottest setting, but this facing could possibly melt. So I'm going to turn up my setting just a little bit because it's hard for you to see, but I can tell that it could stick a little bit better. So this is looking pretty good. Let me turn it over on this side, see how that works. And let's pull this back to see if it's really sticking. So it's hard for me to pull. So as I pull, you can see that there it goes. It's starting to come apart. I can just press that back down. And I think that setting's going to be okay. Bring this over and I'll press down. The reason why you just want a little area open is because this shiny side can melt on your iron. So you might want to use a pressing cloth, but I find usually okay, just that little section there, especially if I'm not on a really high setting. So it's best to press in an up and down motion when you're doing this, at least when you first start. You want to make sure that you don't have any extra interfacing around the edges because this can get caught up in the computer. If you do have a little extra, just trim it off. You'll need to know how to place your project into the printer drawer. I always do a trial run using a piece of paper with an X on it. In this printer, if I load the paper with the X face down, that's the side that gets printed. So I'll take my freezer paper and facing and place the freezer paper side up and the facing side down. Here's my printed sheet. Let's pull this off. And here's my foundation. It's very lightweight, and the best part is you can see the numbers and the sewing lines from both sides, so it makes it easy to place your fabric. You don't have to worry about creasing this ahead of time. So let's try that again. On this printer or copier, Put the freezer paper side facing up. Get my pattern. Here it comes. Let's see. Pull that off. And here's my lightweight foundation. And just an aside here, you don't have to throw that freezer paper away because often the ink goes through, and you can use this as a paper pattern. You're going to have to tear it out, but this is what I like to sew with when making these cards. You can machine piece or hand sew on these foundations. If you've been hand sewing through paper, you'll love this foundation. Your needle easily goes through the material. You'll just have to remember not to use a hot iron when pressing. It's best to have all your strips pressed before sewing, and then finger press the seams or use a pressing tool for those seams. Hope you get a chance to try out this method. Let me know how it turns out. Thanks for visiting LearnHowToQuilt.com. Please like, subscribe, and then share our videos with your friends. Thanks.